It was just about 10 a.m. on the 30th of July, 2011, when indecipherable noises, maybe screaming, could be heard emanating from the 15th floor balcony of an upscale apartment building in Sydney, Australia. A handful of witnesses, confused by the scene, nonetheless rushed to the base of the building, where they found a victim, Cecilia Harnum, had fallen to her death. Within moments, a distraught man runs from the building in a state of shock and grief. This must have been a horrible accident. But if so, what explains the torn note found tucked into Lisa's pocket? Pieced together, it read, "There are surveillance cameras inside and outside the house." Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and this is Just Thought Lounge. JTL is the true crime channel that delivers serious, well-balanced coverage of the cases that really make you think. This is a case that captivated two nations. A Canadian former ballerina meets an older, successful Australian businessman. They move from being roommates into a romantic relationship to an engagement. But only 6 weeks later, it all ended in tragedy. What occurred in the moments before this horrific incident? Was it an accident? An intentional act? Maybe a crime? And why do some people still firmly believe that justice in this case has not been served? Let's take a look. Cecilia Harnum grew up with a love of dance. As a teenager, she was active in the ballet. She was known as an extroverted, energetic, and confident young woman. In 2005, at the age of 24, Lisa was anxious to broaden her horizons, to travel, and to gain new experiences. Raised in the outskirts of Toronto, Canada, with its shorter hot summers and long, extremely cold winters, it's probably not too surprising that Lisa set her sights on sunny Australia. Lisa first arrived in the country on a 12-month work visa, but managed to extend her stay by finding a job at the Australian Hair and Beauty College in Sydney. This salon role was a good fit for Lisa, who loved fashion, hair, and beauty trends. Despite the distance and time difference, Lisa had remained very close to her family in Canada. She spoke and messaged with her mother Joan regularly. The Harnums had been supportive of her move as well as Lisa's plans to obtain Australian citizenship and make the country her permanent home. In 2009, Lisa was looking for a new place to live, so a friend introduced her to a potential roommate. This was a man roughly 10 years her senior, named Simon Gittany. Simon was a shoe importer who wore expensive suits and, at least ostensibly, lived the type of luxurious lifestyle associated with Sydney's up-and-coming professionals. He and his business partner imported primarily from the United States and made a profit in Australia selling high-end footwear online. At first, Lisa told her mother that the arrangement was temporary. She planned to move in with Simon while she looked for something else. There was nothing awkward to worry about, Lisa said, because she was fairly certain that Simon was not even interested in women. Lisa moved into Simon's luxury apartment unit on the 15th floor of an exclusive high-rise building in Sydney's inner city, called The Hyde. The unit's floor-to-ceiling windows walked out onto a spacious balcony with stunning views of Hyde Park, a 40-acre park situated in the city's business district. After only 2 months as roommates, the two developed a romantic relationship. Lisa reported to her mother that she and Simon got on well in the early phase of their relationship. Notably, Lisa never mentioned that she was in love with Simon. Nonetheless, the relationship seemed to be progressing at a pace. As time passed, the couple grew closer, and the relationship more serious. In June 2011, on her 30th birthday, Simon proposed to Lisa in front of a large gathering at a restaurant. Simon had invited his closest friends and his family to be with them.
You don't give me hands to make it official.
6 weeks later, in the early hours of the 30th of July, 2011, Lisa locked herself in the bathroom of the home she shared with her fiancé and phoned her mother in Canada. She begged her mother to come to Australia and help her get away from Simon. Joan agreed to request a leave of absence from work and come to the aid of her daughter. Meanwhile, Lisa had her bag packed. Her mother suggested that she not waste any time. She told Lisa to grab her handbag and her passport and get out. Less than 24 hours later, the Toronto Police Department arrived at Joan Harnum's door. They brought with them sad news from Australia. Around 10 a.m. on the morning of the 30th of July, a young Japanese exchange student was walking to Liverpool Street to catch a bus home with his brother. He waited on the Hyde Park side of the street at a bus stop, facing the Hyde, the building where Simon and Lisa lived. While waiting for his bus, the student heard a noise which caused him to look up. He did not recall later exactly what the sound was, aside from it being loud, but what he saw next, he would never forget. A body was falling down the side of the building. On a balcony above, a shirtless man stood leaning over and gazing down. Minutes later, Simon Gittany, in his pajamas, ran from the building in distress towards where his fiancée had landed. The police and emergency services rushed to the scene, but the fall had been devastating. Lisa Cecilia Harnum did not survive. Lisa's handbag was lying next to her on the ground. She was fully clothed with the exception of one shoe that had likely become dislodged from the fall. Inside Lisa's pocket was a note, torn into small pieces, which read, "There are surveillance cameras inside and outside the house." There were indeed working cameras in the apartment unit at the time of Lisa's fall. There were also external surveillance cameras which captured the moments immediately following. These showed Simon, visibly distraught, running from the unit to call a lift, then directly back inside for a moment. When he re-emerged in the hallway, the lift had arrived, and he had put on a shirt. Roughly 4 minutes elapsed before he reached the ground floor. Simon told the police how to operate the security system and cameras inside the apartment. He did not tell them, however, about a hard drive, which was assumed to have stored historical footage from inside the apartment. By the time the investigators became aware of a hard drive, it was gone. Regardless, perhaps the most damning evidence of what had occurred inside the apartment in the minutes just before Lisa's fall was obtained from these cameras. A brief image was captured on a camera directed at the front door. It showed Lisa attempting to leave, and then it showed Simon pulling her back inside. This footage was taken an estimated 65 to 69 seconds before Lisa's fall. It was clear that a heated argument had taken place between the couple in the lead-up to Lisa's death. This much Simon Gittany admitted, or rather, could not deny. Neighbors in the building reported hearing Lisa screaming. From inside their units, these neighbors reported hearing cries of, please help me, God, please help me." One neighbor's door was also banged on from the hallway. Then, there was silence. Simon told investigators they had an argument after Lisa told him she had a secret to reveal, but would not disclose it. According to Simon, the situation rapidly cooled down. It was their custom when they found themselves in a disagreement for one of them to offer an act of contrition, and they would settle down and talk things through. In this case, Simon went to the kitchen to make Lisa a tea. While in the kitchen, Simon again asked Lisa about the alleged secret that she would not tell him. It was at this point that Lisa stood up in the living room and ran for the balcony, which was connected through her bedroom. Simon ran after her. He believed at this point she was staging an act to scare him. This behavior from his fiancée was not uncommon, he said. She had previously opened the door to a rapidly moving vehicle and threatened to jump out. On another occasion, she had leapt from a moving car, though not when it was moving at high speed. Climbing over the treadmill and onto the balcony, Lisa then climbed over the railing. According to Simon, she seemed to shift her weight onto the top of the awning directly below, believing it to be level to the balcony floor, which it was not. She slipped. Unable to recover, Lisa fell as Simon ran to her, grasping over the edge, but too late to save her. Simon screamed out her name in anguish, which was perhaps the noise that drew the attention of the young student standing at the bus stop on the street below. At first glance, Simon's version of events seemed plausible. Even pieces of the physical evidence seemed to fit. But there were immediate questions, such as why Lisa would have carried her handbag over the railing with her. Forensic teams did not recover any of Lisa's fingerprints on the balcony glass, though they did find Simon's. However, some experts asserted that had Lisa climbed over using her bag to clutch the railing, it was likely that only smudges and not clear fingerprints would be left behind, which was the case. Was Simon's version of events just plausible enough to hold off a murder charge? It may have been, if it was not for one key witness, who saw more than the aftermath of the horrific incident that morning. Joshua Rathmel was also walking through Hyde Park at about 10 a.m. when incoherent noises drew his attention to the 15th floor balcony of the Hyde apartment building.
What you saw on that day, please. Sure. From my perception, without a shirt on, carrying what I thought at the time was a black suitcase or bit of luggage or several items, and it looked to me as though he was unloading them, throwing them off. It was someone holding the black object and unloading it, almost in a rage.
Josh did not see what hit the ground, but he did go over to Liverpool Street to see a crowd of people apparently trying to resuscitate someone. Josh approached the growing crowd of people gathering at the base of the apartment building. After a few minutes, he witnessed a man that we know to be Simon run out of the building in his red-striped pajama bottoms and white t-shirt.
After what seemed like quite a while, definitely maybe 4 minutes, I would assume, a man in a white shirt and red pajama pants came out and observed the body from a distance for a short while before going crouching next to it and speaking to the people trying to revive her.
Josh worked as an editor for ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. After witnessing the incident, he continued on to work. But when he saw the news of Lisa's death being reported across the network later that day, he recognized what he had witnessed and contacted the police to tell them what he saw. His recollection of events would later be hotly contested. In text to her mother, Lisa wrote of her roommate turned fiancé, "I think I love this guy," but also that he was suffocating and controlling. In September of 2010, nearly a year prior to her death, Lisa texted, "I miss my family and my friends so much. I have no life." Simon had convinced Lisa to leave her job at the salon. Over time, he also persuaded her to stop working out at the public gym. Her personal trainer began sessions with her in the apartment. He also began to insist that Lisa, with her love of the beauty and fashion industries, adopt a kind of standardized, bland, and conservative uniform. Plain bottoms, trousers preferably, flat shoes, nothing revealing. Her long hair was to be tied back and no makeup applied. According to family and friends, in the aftermath of her death, they saw clearly how Lisa had become isolated. The once extroverted, energetic, and confident dancer had become a shell of her former self. This was not the way Simon Gittany characterized the relationship, of course. They had disputes, made compromises, and despite his, at times, obsessive nature, there was also a lot of love and affection in the relationship. In an audio file dated the 10th of June 2011, roughly a month prior to her fall, Lisa secretly recorded a late-night conversation with her fiancé. Simon often called Lisa by her middle name, Cecilia.
I have nothing else to do in my life other than you. That's it. If I had my family here, You know
I'm
what?
here for
I
you,
would spend
Pablo.
half of my time with you and half of my time with my family.
I know.
You know what I mean? I don't have anybody else.
You have me.
So when and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, Simon, but it hurts my feelings
You
when you
have
say
me,
the
Baba.
things to me. No, it's like I've
It's
never.
like
You know
healthy
what?
for
Like
us.
I always wait at home for you. I do it. Like I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything without your permission, without asking you, without you being okay with everything, and I don't do anything other than whatever it is that you tell me to do. It's like, you know what? Honestly, Simon, sometimes the things you say to me can be really mean.
They're not meant to be mean. They're not meant to be
Sometimes
mean.
they can be really mean
All
to
I'm
me,
saying
and
then is because
I don't do anything intentionally to hurt
I
your
know you
feelings.
don't,
I don't do
baby.
anything. Like I
I
just
know
love
you
being with you. Like
I
the
know
only
you
time I
do.
ever speak to somebody is
Did I not stick up for you today? Did I not fight
you
for you?
did, and I loved it. But
And it's why it's because I love you, Cecilia. I might not say it all the time, or I might not, you might not think it or feel it, or even though we do have a beautiful relationship, but know that it is real and that I love you.
One text message from Simon to Lisa read, "Please don't let any guy talk to you, or please don't look at any guy, as your eyes should gaze only on me, the one." In the 6 weeks between their engagement and Lisa's death, there were signs that she was coming to terms with her situation and trying to get out of the relationship. She reached out to her personal trainer, Lisa Brown. Lisa packed up some of her belongings and handed them off to her trainer to place them in storage until she needed them. Then, in the early morning hours of July 30th, Lisa locked herself in the bathroom and placed the secret call to her mother, arranging for Joan to meet her in Sydney.
We didn't know at all to the extent that, how much he was tracking her. I just remember one time when she was home and he kept calling her, and just for her comment about, how does he always know where I am?
What Lisa did not know then, but may have suspected, was that Simon had been monitoring her every call, text message, email, and online bookings via a software program that he had installed on her computer. Cameras were also installed inside the apartment so he could watch her movements. As the note found in her pocket suggests, she had recently come to discover these secret cameras. Through his monitoring, Simon had learned of Lisa's plans to leave him, of her belongings passed off to her trainer, of her phone calls home to her mother, and her plane tickets back to Canada. Police charged Simon Gittany with murder, and he was remanded in custody but granted bail in January 2012. He pleaded not guilty and remained free on bond. That was until the final phase of his trial, just before closing statements were delivered in November 2013, at which point his bail was revoked. With no cameras allowed inside the courtroom, the movement of Simon Gittany's family coming and going from the proceedings were watched closely by the media. In particular, focus was placed on Simon's new flame, 23-year-old Rachel Louise. The model's resemblance to the deceased victim did not go unnoticed, and no doubt heightened the level of media and tabloid attention paid to the trial.
Simon is good.
Can you breathe? No.
Simon's new girlfriend was fiercely loyal, attending the trial daily, carrying signs of support, and speaking of his innocence at every opportunity. Rachel reportedly gave Simon about $85,000 of her life savings to fund his defense, and borrowed another $35,000 from friends. Despite these funds, Simon was granted a judge-only trial after saying he had run out of money and could not support a defense for a full jury trial. The trial proceeded before Justice Lucy McCallum over 4 weeks from the 21st of October 2013. Simon's defense suggested that Lisa had in fact intended to jump over the railing and that she was depressed. There was little to suggest that this was likely. However weak this argument was, potential holes in the prosecution's case were present in the physical evidence. The glass balcony railing measured 1.2 meters in height, which is roughly 4 feet. Simon Gittany is 169 centimeters tall, or roughly 5.5 feet, which would mean lifting his fiancée to a height higher than the railing would have been challenging. Lisa Harnum weighed 50 kilos, or 110 pounds. Was Simon physically capable of lifting her to that height and unloading her over the balcony, as the prosecution asserted, and the key witness had testified? Anthony Gittany, Simon's brother, attempted to recreate the scene in an exercise intended to disprove the plausibility of the prosecution's theory. Carrying Lisa out to the balcony would also have required navigating the treadmill and a potted plant. Both were undisturbed upon law enforcement's arrival. The surveillance footage in the building confirmed that only a few short minutes had passed between the fall and Simon leaving the apartment to rush outside. Most of this time was waiting for the lift to be called to the 15th floor. This left little to no time to tidy the scene. There were further questions relating to Lisa's physical state at the time. The theory of the murder held that Lisa had been rendered unconscious and dropped from the balcony. There would likely have been signs of disturbance had there been a struggle. Neighbors reported cries in the hallway and near to the apartment door that abruptly went silent. Just over 1 minute passed from this point to the time that Lisa went over. So she may have been unconscious, or the couple may have decided to settle down and talk things through, however unlikely that may seem. The autopsy did not find any signs of trauma aside from those caused by the fall itself. If Lisa had been knocked out, there was no evidence to suggest how. It is also unclear how Lisa had continued to hold onto her handbag had she been unconscious. These considerations necessarily raised questions surrounding the testimony of the key witness who could confirm that Simon had intentionally killed Lisa, Joshua Rathmell. Of the handful of witnesses around the base of the hide that morning, Josh was both the furthest away as well as the only individual who saw the moments before Lisa fell. Others reported only hearing some kind of noise and then the aftermath. The international student who was closest to the scene of those present stood directly facing the building and looked up immediately upon hearing noises, yet he did not witness what had actually caused the fall. Joshua testified that he heard emotional and deranged cries. At first, he thought they were coming from a junkie throwing items off of a balcony. Then, he looked up and saw the shirtless man dropping what appeared to be a black duffel bag or luggage from the 15th floor. At trial, Joshua agreed with Simon's defense on one point, that the screams and seeing the man on the balcony happened in a very short period of time. Joshua stated, "We're talking about a split second here. All I can confidently say is the scream drew my attention straight away." Then he was asked, given the extremely short time frames and given the distance you were away, you would agree that there may well be some doubt about the accuracy of your observations. "Absolutely," he said. The circumstantial evidence was strong. The disagreement had overflowed into the hallway only about a minute before Lisa's death. Simon had been a domineering and possessive partner, by Lisa's own admission, and there was certainly other evidence to prove that point. But it also seems that he had a violent past. Simon was first arrested for assault as a teenager in 1991 after being confronted by an ex-girlfriend's employer. Simon had been, allegedly, harassing his ex at her place of work in a Western Sydney shopping center. Following the confrontation, he returned with a dozen companions and attacked and punched the man. He was caught with stolen items in his car a few years after that. When police visited his home after he failed to attend a scheduled court hearing, he assaulted 2 police detectives. At the age of 20, he was charged with maliciously wounding one of the detectives after biting off part of the man's ear.
He fell back onto a bed and I landed on top of him. That's when I felt him bite into my left ear. He bit right through and spat the piece out.
Unbeknown to Lisa Harnum, she had been living with a man who had been sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. However, he had never served a full-time prison sentence, and he had done an excellent job of burying his past. After convincing a sentencing judge that he had repented and planned to become a Catholic, Simon left for France but returned after a short trip, having abandoned his faith. In the years following, he was arrested relating to drug supply charges, found guilty by the New South Wales court, and was sentenced to 3 years periodic detention. By the time Lisa Harnum moved in with him, Simon had started a women's shoe importation business, which ran the website Shoe Candy. He was ostensibly a legitimate and successful businessman. Delivering her verdict over an unprecedented 5 hours, Justice McCallum found Simon Gittany reacted with nothing short of rage when he discovered Lisa had secretly removed some of her belongings. The justice found that Joshua Rathmell's testimony was credible, despite a defense expert testifying that his recollection was likely a false memory, formed based upon information that he was exposed to after the event itself. She described Simon's own testimony as unconvincing, like a person playing a role. The justice's assessment conceded that Simon's version of events fit the physical evidence like a checkbox exercise. But his narrative of what had taken place lacked elements of personal interactions and details that make the truth, when it is being told, believable. Importantly, she also rejected the defense claim that Lisa had tendencies towards suicide or self-harm. When the final verdict was read, guilty of murder, Rachel Louise yelled out in the court, "You're friggin' wrong," at Justice McCallum before rapidly exiting the courtroom in tears.
Does anyone have a lighter?
If you could give us a
Does
few
anyone
words,
have a lighter on
then
them?
we can leave.
Does anyone have a lighter?
Rachel Louise witnessed increasing vitriol from the media. Both in Australia and internationally, she was demonized for standing by Simon Gittany. She routinely escaped the proceedings for smoke breaks, hounded by journalists, photographers, and cameras. But she continued to try to make the case that Simon could not have murdered Lisa. Some of the more forgiving criticism towards Rachel painted the young model as simply young and naive, but others accused her of using the tragedy of Lisa's death to steal her own 15 minutes of fame. Still others cruelly joked that she should go stand next to her boyfriend on a balcony. Rachel later sued the Daily Telegraph over 3 separate articles that allegedly made her out to be a prostitute, a stripper, a bimbo, and a woman of loose morals. By the time she testified in this lawsuit in May 2015, she and Simon were no longer an item. Rachel won an undisclosed settlement with the Daily Telegraph, and she maintained even then that Simon is innocent of the murder. Justice McCallum sentenced Simon Gittany, then 40 years old, to a minimum of 18 years and a maximum of 26 years for Lisa Harnum's murder.
Is that a heavier sentence than you expected?
Do you still think he's innocent?
He subsequently lost his appeal in 2016. Simon will not be eligible for parole until May 2031. Joan Harnum, alongside other family members, flew from Toronto to Sydney for the duration of the trial. She spoke afterwards about Lisa Cecilia's legacy.
We will always mourn the loss of our beautiful Lisa Cecilia and are working towards making her legacy a powerful wake-up call to young women and to parents, siblings, and friends of these young women to be aware of the warning signs of a controlling relationship and take a proactive approach to assisting them.
The Lisa Harnum Foundation provides support services designed to help individuals and families affected by domestic and family violence. You can take a look at the work they do via the website link provided in the description below. Those that still advocate for Simon's innocence have pointed to videos taken by Lisa during the good times. They question whether this appears to be the interactions of a couple whose relationship would end in murder.
Let me see the fingers. Let's get a close-up on the face. Look at all the gunk all over that face.
And that was the tragic story of Lisa Harnum and the conviction of Simon Gittany. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.